After 35 years in healthcare administration, I knew exactly how to dress for a battlefield. The navy blazer, the pearl earrings my late mother gave me, the sensible heels that said professional without screaming trying too hard. At 63, I'd learned that in a room full of skeptics, your armor matters. But that Tuesday morning, as I stood in front of my closet preparing for what I thought would be a routine hospital board meeting, I had no idea I'd need every piece of that armor. You see, sometimes the battles we think we're fighting turn out to be entirely different wars. And sometimes the words that wound us deepest come from the people we've mentored ourselves. The coffee was still hot in my thermos as I drove through the early morning Toronto streets toward Street, Catherine's Regional Hospital. February in Ontario meant gray skies and slush-covered roads, but I'd made this commute so many times I could probably do it blindfolded. 35 years. I'd started as a floor nurse in 1989, worked my way through night shifts and double shifts, put myself through my master's degree in healthcare administration while raising 2 kids as a single mother after my husband passed. By 2005, I'd become the Director of Patient Services. By 2015, Chief Operating Officer. Every promotion earned, every milestone fought for. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from my daughter. "Good luck today, Mom. Remember, you've got this." I smiled. Jessica always seemed to know when I needed encouragement, even when I hadn't told her anything was wrong. Mothers and daughters, we have that connection. At 38, she was a lawyer now, with 2 kids of her own, my beautiful grandchildren who I picked up from school every Wednesday. Grandma Rose's Day, they called it. We'd get ice cream, I'd help with homework, we'd laugh about whatever drama was happening in 4th and 6th grade. Those Wednesdays kept me young, kept me grounded, reminded me why I worked so hard to make healthcare better for families like ours. The hospital parking lot was filling up quickly. I grabbed my briefcase, checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror, and headed inside. Street. Catherine's had grown from a modest community hospital to a major regional medical center during my tenure. We'd added 2 wings, implemented cutting-edge patient care systems, reduced wait times by 40%, and earned national recognition for our innovative approach to healthcare delivery. I was proud of this place. It was my life's work. Built one decision, one policy, one patient at a time. "Morning, Mrs. Chen," the security guard called out. Marcus had worked here for 15 years, and we always exchanged pleasantries about his daughter's college applications or my grandchildren's latest adventures. "Morning, Marcus. How did Emily's interview go?" "She got in. Full scholarship to University of Toronto." "That's wonderful. I told you she would." These small connections, these relationships, they mattered. Healthcare wasn't just about systems and metrics. It was about people. I'd built my entire career on that philosophy, and it had served me well, or so I thought. The boardroom was on the 7th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I arrived 15 minutes early, as always. Professional, prepared. I reviewed my notes one last time. Today's agenda included the quarterly financial report, updates on our new cardiac care unit, and what was listed simply as strategic planning discussion. Nothing unusual. We had these meetings every quarter. Same room, same people, same routine. Board members began trickling in. Dr. Patterson, our chief of surgery, gave me a warm smile. Margaret Leo, who'd served on the board for 20 years, squeezed my shoulder as she passed. These were my colleagues, my allies, people I'd worked alongside through budget crises and pandemics and everything in between. But I noticed something odd. A few of them wouldn't quite meet my eyes. And there was whispering, quick, furtive conversations that stopped when I looked up. Then she walked in. Dr. Vanessa Cole, 34 years old, Harvard Medical School, MBA from Stanford, recruited 2 years ago to be our Director of Innovation and Strategic Development. Brilliant, ambitious, and carrying a laptop and a stack of presentation folders that definitely weren't on the official agenda. "Good morning, everyone." Board Chair David Morrison called the meeting to order. He was 68, a retired CEO who'd guided this board for a decade. We'd worked together on countless initiatives. I trusted him. "Let's begin with the financial report." Rose, you're up. I stood and walked through the numbers. Revenue up 8%, operating costs down 3%, patient satisfaction scores at an all-time high of 92%, readmission rates down, everything trending positive. I'd prepared this presentation carefully, backed every claim with data, showed clear evidence of strong leadership and sound financial management. When I finished, there was polite applause. "Excellent work, as always," David said, but his smile seemed strained. Now, before we move to the cardiac care update, Vanessa has asked for some time to present what she's calling a vision for Street, Catherine's future. I've agreed to let her share her thoughts. He glanced at me. "Rose, you weren't aware of this addition to the agenda, but I think you'll find it interesting." My stomach tightened. An unannounced presentation at a board meeting wasn't just irregular, it was practically unheard of. And the way David was looking at me, apologetic, uncomfortable, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't going to be good. Vanessa stood up, moving to the front of the room with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "Thank you, David. And thank you all for this opportunity." She clicked her remote and her first slide appeared. The future of healthcare. A generational shift. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Street Catherine's has a proud history," Vanessa began, her voice smooth and practiced. "Under Rose's leadership, we've achieved remarkable things. The numbers she just shared speak for themselves. But here's what we need to ask ourselves. Are we positioned for the next 35 years? Or are we still operating with the mindset of the last 35? She clicked to the next slide. It showed demographic data, charts about aging populations, statistics about healthcare leadership. The average age of hospital administrators in Canada is 58. The average age of our patient population is 36 and dropping. We're being led by a generation that, frankly, doesn't fully understand the healthcare needs and expectations of millennials and Gen Z. I sat frozen, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Was she seriously doing this? In front of the entire board? "Don't get me wrong," Vanessa continued, and now she looked directly at me with what I'm sure she thought was a respectful expression. "Rose has been an incredible asset to this hospital. Her dedication is unmatched. Her experience is valuable. But experience can also become a liability when the world changes faster than our leadership can adapt." Margaret Liu shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Dr. Patterson frowned, but no one said anything. They were all just listening, watching, waiting to see where this was going. "I've spent the last 6 months conducting what I call an innovation audit of our systems," Vanessa said. Click. A new slide showing various hospital departments. "And what I've found is that we're falling behind. Our patient portal is outdated compared to what other hospitals offer. Our telemedicine capabilities are basic at best. We're not leveraging AI for diagnostic support. We're not using predictive analytics for resource allocation. We're running a 21st century hospital with late 20th century thinking." Now I felt anger starting to burn through the shock. Late 20th century thinking? I had implemented our current patient portal system. I had pushed for telemedicine integration before COVID-19 made it mandatory. I had hired Vanessa specifically to help us explore AI applications in healthcare. "What I'm proposing," Vanessa said, and this slide made my blood run cold, "is a leadership transition plan. Rose has given us 35 extraordinary years. She's earned her rest. She should be spending time with her grandchildren, not working 70-hour weeks trying to keep up with technological change she didn't grow up with." There it was, wrapped in respectful language, dressed up as concern for my well-being, but the message was clear. You're old, you're obsolete, it's time to go. "I believe what Street Catherine's needs," Vanessa continued, building to her big finish, "is fresh leadership, a digital native perspective. Someone who intuitively understands the technology and cultural shifts that will define healthcare's future. Rose, no one is questioning your legacy. We're just asking you to consider whether holding on to your position serves the hospital's best interests or just your own." The room was utterly silent. I could hear the heating system humming, someone's pen tapping nervously against the table, the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. Vanessa was smiling, confident she'd made her case. Several board members were looking at me with pity. Pity, as if I were some pathetic figure who didn't know when her time was up. David cleared his throat. "Rose, would you like to respond?" Would I like to respond? I'd been publicly humiliated, told I was too old to do the job I'd been doing successfully for decades, and he was asking if I'd like to respond as if this were some academic debate. But I kept my voice steady. Professional. After 35 years, I knew how to control my emotions even when I wanted to scream. "Yes," I said quietly. "I would." I stood up, leaving my carefully prepared notes on the table. I didn't need them anymore. "Vanessa, first let me say thank you for your honesty. It takes courage to tell someone to their face that you think they're past their prime." My voice was calm, almost gentle, which made the words cut deeper. "But let's talk about what you call fresh leadership and what I call dangerous inexperience." I walked to the front of the room, standing next to her presentation. "You mentioned our patient portal. You called it outdated. What you didn't mention is that I implemented that system 4 years ago after 18 months of research, vendor negotiations, and staff training. Is it perfect? No. But it serves 42,000 patients with a 91% satisfaction rating. The system you're implicitly proposing we replace it with? That's the new platform from Health Tech Solutions, isn't it? The one you've met with 3 times in the past month?" Vanessa's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Health Tech Solutions is offering you a consulting position if you can get Street Catherines to sign a $10 million contract with them. I know because their CEO called me last week to feel out my interest. I said no because their system has been implemented at 6 hospitals in the US and 4 of them are already reporting major integration problems." Now she was pale. The board members were leaning forward, suddenly very interested. "You want to talk about AI and predictive analytics?" I continued. "I hired Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, one of the leading experts in healthcare AI, as a consultant 6 months ago. We've been piloting a diagnostic support system in our emergency department. It's reduced misdiagnosis rates by 18%. We're presenting the results at the Canadian Medical Association conference next month. Perhaps you missed that because you were busy conducting your innovation audit without actually talking to the people doing the innovation." Dr. Patterson spoke up. "Rose, I wasn't aware of the AI pilot program because we don't announce initiatives until we have results worth sharing. That's called responsible leadership, not technological ignorance." I turned back to Vanessa. "You mentioned telemedicine. Basic at best, you said. Last year, we conducted 78,000 telemedicine appointments. We have virtual care options for 12 different specialties. We've reduced no-show rates by 32% and expanded access to rural communities across 3 counties. But please, tell me more about how I don't understand technology." The room was shifting. I could feel it. The pity in their eyes was being replaced by something else. Respect, anger on my behalf, recognition that they'd almost been fooled. "Here's what I think is really happening," I said, my voice harder now. "You're 34 years old. You're brilliant, well-educated, and deeply ambitious. All admirable qualities. But you've decided that anyone over 60 is automatically an obstacle to progress. You've dressed up age discrimination in the language of innovation. You've assumed that because I'm a grandmother, I must not understand technology. That because I started my career before cell phones existed, I can't possibly navigate the digital age." I walked back to my seat but remained standing. "Let me tell you something about my generation, Vanessa. We didn't grow up with technology. We invented it. We learned to adapt to change because we lived through more change than you can imagine. I started my career using paper charts and carbon copies. I learned electronic medical records. I learned hospital management software. I learned data analytics and quality improvement methodologies and every other system that came along because that's what leaders do. We learn, we adapt, we grow." Margaret Liu was nodding. Several other board members were too. "You want to know about understanding the next generation?" I continued. "My grandchildren are 10 and 12. Every Wednesday, I pick them up from school. We don't just get ice cream and chat. My grandson teaches me about his coding class. My granddaughter explains TikTok trends to me. I listen. I learn. I stay connected to the world they're growing up in because that's part of being a good leader and a good grandmother. You don't get to assume I'm out of touch just because I was born in a different decade. Vanessa tried to interrupt. Rose, I never said. Let me finish. My voice cracked like a whip, and she went silent. You said holding on to my position might serve my interests instead of the hospital's. Let's examine that. Under my leadership, this hospital's revenue has increased by $120 million. We've expanded services to underserved communities. We've maintained top-tier accreditation. We've weathered a global pandemic that broke other hospitals. We've won awards for patient care, for workplace culture, for innovation. Yes, innovation. Because I've hired people like you to bring fresh perspectives. But I've also provided the wisdom and experience to determine which fresh perspectives are actually good ideas and which are just flashy proposals that will waste millions of dollars and damage patient care. I pulled out my phone, something I never did in board meetings, and pulled up an email. This morning, I received notification that Street Catherine's has been shortlisted for the Excellence in Healthcare Leadership Award from the Canadian Hospital Association. We're one of 5 hospitals in the entire country nominated. The nomination specifically cited our balance of traditional values and innovative approaches. Our ability to combine experienced leadership with emerging technologies. Do you know what the citation said? It said Street Catherine's represents the ideal model of generational collaboration in healthcare administration. David Morrison was reading something on his own tablet. Rose, I'm looking at this nomination. I wasn't even aware we were under consideration. Because I don't lead for awards and recognition, I lead for results. I looked at each board member in turn. But since we're apparently evaluating my fitness for this position, let's look at those results. Since I became COO 8 years ago, patient mortality rates are down 23%, surgical complication rates down 15%, healthcare-associated infection rates down 41%, staff retention up 19%. Those aren't vanity metrics. Those are human lives saved, families kept whole, healthcare workers who love their jobs and stay to serve this community. Now I turned to Vanessa again, and I let her see the anger I'd been holding back. You want to talk about generational understanding? I've mentored 17 young administrators over my career. 3 of them are COOs at other hospitals now. 2 are CEOs. I wrote recommendation letters for your Stanford MBA application, Vanessa. I hired you when you had 1 year of work experience and a head full of theories but no practical knowledge of how hospitals actually function. I gave you opportunities to lead projects, to make mistakes and learn from them, to build your career. And this is how you repay that mentorship? By trying to publicly push me into retirement so you can take my job? I never said I wanted your position, she protested weakly. You didn't have to say it, but let me be very clear about something. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. I'm not ready to retire. I'm not holding on to this position out of ego or fear. I'm here because I'm still the best person for this job. I have the experience, the knowledge, the relationships, and yes, the energy to lead this hospital. I work 70-hour weeks not because I'm trying to keep up with change I don't understand, but because this is a demanding job that requires dedication. And I give it that dedication because I care about this institution and everyone it serves. The room was electrified now. Dr. Patterson was openly glaring at Vanessa. Margaret Liu looked furious. Even David Morrison, who'd allowed this ambush to happen, seemed embarrassed. Here's what I propose instead of Vanessa's leadership transition plan, I said. I'll stay as COO for at least 5 more years. During that time, I'll continue to mentor young leaders, including Vanessa if she's interested in learning rather than undermining. We'll continue to balance innovation with stability, new technologies with proven practices. We'll leverage the strengths of every generation represented in this hospital's leadership, because that's what good organizations do. They don't discard wisdom in pursuit of novelty. They don't confuse age with obsolescence. They don't let ambitious young people push out capable older leaders just because they think youth equals progress. I sat down, my heart racing but my expression calm. Oh, and one more thing. Vanessa, your presentation cited demographic data about our patient population getting younger, but you got the numbers wrong. The average age of our patient population is 42, not 36. It's increasing, not dropping, because of aging demographics across Canada. If you're going to use data to make your case, at least make sure the data is accurate. That's something my late 20th century thinking taught me. Facts matter. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa was staring at her laptop screen, her face flushed red. Some board members were making notes. Others were just staring at me with what looked like newfound respect. Finally, David spoke. I think we need to table this discussion and reconvene in a closed session to discuss hospital leadership structure. Rose, Vanessa, if you could both excuse us. I gathered my materials with steady hands and walked out of that boardroom with my head high. But the moment I reached my office, the moment I closed the door behind me, I had to sit down because my legs were shaking. 35 years. I'd given this hospital 35 years of my life, and someone I'd mentored had just tried to force me out by exploiting age bias. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret Liu. That was the most professional takedown I've ever witnessed. You're not going anywhere. Then Dr. Patterson. Board is voting. Don't worry. Then 5 more board members, all sending support. An hour later, David Morrison knocked on my door. Rose, can I come in? I nodded, bracing myself. The board voted unanimously. Vanessa's proposal is rejected. You have our full support as COO for as long as you want to stay. He paused. I owe you an apology. I should never have let her ambush you like that. I thought it would be good to hear different perspectives, but that wasn't a perspective, it was an attack. I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. And Vanessa? She's been asked to submit her resignation. The Health Tech Solutions conflict of interest alone would be grounds for termination, but combined with everything else, he trailed off. She'll be gone by end of day. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time, looking out the window at the city I'd served for more than 3 decades. I thought about my husband, who died when I was 41 and left me to raise 2 kids alone. I thought about those night shifts when I'd been so tired I could barely stand, studying for my master's degree in stolen moments between patient rounds. I thought about every time I'd been overlooked for a promotion because I was a woman, or a single mother, or not aggressive enough, or too aggressive. I'd fought for every inch of my career. And now, at 63, I was being told I'd earned my rest, as if rest was the reward for a life well lived, as if there was nothing left for me to contribute. But here's what I learned in that boardroom, what I wish someone had told me decades ago. You don't earn the right to exist in your professional space, you claim it. You don't wait for permission to be valued. You demonstrate your value and refuse to let anyone diminish it. And most importantly, you don't let anyone define your worth based on their narrow assumptions about who you should be at any particular age. I picked up my phone and called my daughter. Jessica, your text this morning about me having this? You were right. I did. I knew you would, Mom. You always do. Want to tell me what happened? Not yet, but I will over dinner. Can you and the kids come over this Saturday? I want to celebrate. Celebrate what? Still being exactly who I am, and still having work I love to do. That evening, I drove home through those same gray Toronto streets, but everything felt different, lighter, clearer. I thought about my grandchildren and how I'd tell them this story someday when they were older. I'd tell them that age is not a limitation, it's a credential. Every year you survive, every challenge you overcome, every lesson you learn, it all adds up to wisdom that no amount of education or ambition can replace. I'd tell them that the world will try to put you in boxes, tell you what you should be doing at 25 or 45 or 65. People will make assumptions about your capabilities based on your age, your gender, your appearance, your background, and your job isn't to convince them they're wrong. Your job is to prove it through your actions, your results, your unwavering commitment to excellence. I'd tell them that mentoring young people doesn't mean diminishing yourself. It doesn't mean stepping aside so they can have a turn. It means standing beside them, showing them the path while also learning from their fresh perspectives. Real mentorship is reciprocal. It's generational collaboration, not generational replacement. Most of all, I tell them this: you take up exactly the space you deserve, not the space others think you should occupy based on their biases and assumptions. Not the space that feels safe or comfortable or easy. The space you deserve. The space you've earned through your work, your dedication, your refusal to accept anything less than your full potential. And you deserve that space whether you're 25 or 65 or 95, whether you're just starting your career or at the peak of it, or continuing long past when others think you should stop. Because human value isn't something that expires. Professional worth isn't something that diminishes with age. And leadership isn't defined by how digitally native you are or how many trendy management theories you can cite. Leadership is defined by results, by integrity, by the courage to stand up when you're being pushed out unjustly, by the wisdom to know when to fight and how to fight effectively, by the commitment to keep learning, keep growing, keep adapting, no matter how many years you've already invested in your craft. The next morning, I was back at my desk by 7 a.m., reviewing plans for the cardiac care unit expansion. I had work to do, patients to serve, a hospital to run, young leaders to mentor properly this time, making sure they understood that ambition should be channeled into innovation and improvement, not into undermining the people who gave them their chances. At noon, I picked up my grandchildren from school for an early dismissal day. My grandson showed me a video he'd made on his phone about climate change for his science class. My granddaughter told me about the new social media app everyone at school was using. I listened, asked questions, learned, because that's what you do when you want to stay relevant and connected. You engage, you adapt. You never stop being curious about the changing world, even when you've already seen more change than most people can imagine. "Grandma," my grandson asked as we shared ice cream at our favorite spot, "why do you still work so much? Don't you want to retire and just hang out with us?" I thought about how to answer that. I love hanging out with you both. Wednesday afternoons are my favorite part of every week, but I also love my work. I'm good at it, and I'm not ready to stop. Does that make sense? "So you can do both?" my granddaughter said. "Have a job and have a life?" Exactly. You can be a grandmother and a leader. You can be professional and personal. You can love your family and also love your work. You don't have to choose. Anyone who tells you that you have to give up one to deserve the other, they're wrong. They both nodded, and we went back to eating our ice cream. Simple moment. Ordinary Wednesday. But in that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. Fighting for my position wasn't about ego or fear of retirement. It was about refusing to let anyone else decide when my value expired. 2 weeks later, the board meeting reconvened for our regular quarterly session. New Director of Innovation position posted, "Interview process beginning." I'd be part of the selection committee, naturally. This time, we'd find someone who understood that innovation builds on foundation, doesn't demolish it, someone who could bring fresh ideas without dismissing institutional knowledge, someone who valued collaboration across generations instead of seeing age as an automatic disqualification. As I presented the cardiac care unit updates, I noticed something different in the room: more attention, more respect, more recognition that experience isn't a liability, it's an asset. That the person who's been doing something for 35 years might actually know what they're talking about. After the meeting, several board members approached me. They wanted my input on long-term strategic planning. They wanted to know how we could better leverage my knowledge while also preparing for future leadership transitions, real ones, not forced ones. They wanted to understand how to build an organization that valued all generations equally. And that's when I realized the real lesson from that horrible Tuesday morning 2 weeks ago. Vanessa's attack hadn't diminished me, it had clarified my value. It had forced me to articulate what I brought to this position, not just to others, but to myself. It had reminded me why I'd stayed in healthcare for 35 years, despite the long hours and difficult decisions and constant challenges. I stayed because I was good at it, because I made a difference, because patients received better care, staff had better working conditions, and the community had better health outcomes because of decisions I made. And those things would still be true whether I was 43 or 63 or 83. So here's what I want every person reading this to understand. Whether you're just starting your career or wondering if it's time to step aside, your value isn't determined by your age. Your contribution isn't limited by how many years you've been alive. Your worth isn't diminished because younger people with newer degrees think they know better. You have earned your space. You have proven your capabilities. You have demonstrated your value. And anyone who tries to push you out based on age isn't concerned about progress or innovation. They're concerned about their own advancement and willing to use discrimination to get it. Stand your ground. Know your worth. Document your achievements. Be ready to defend your position with facts and data and evidence of your continued excellence. Don't let anyone wrap age discrimination in respectful language and present it as if they're doing you a favor. And if you're a young professional reading this, hear me clearly. Ambition is wonderful. Fresh perspectives are valuable. New ideas should always be welcomed. But never, ever assume that age equals obsolescence. The person who's been doing this job for decades might have more to teach you than you can possibly imagine. Learn from them, collaborate with them, build on their foundation instead of trying to demolish it. Because someday, you'll be the older professional. Someday, someone younger will look at you and think you're past your prime. And in that moment, you'll remember this story. You'll remember that worth isn't measured in years. That expertise isn't replaced by enthusiasm. That wisdom earned through experience is irreplaceable, no matter how much the world tries to convince us otherwise. I'm 63 years old. I'm a grandmother, a healthcare administrator, a mentor, a leader, and a woman who still has plenty of fight left in her. I take up exactly the space I deserve, and I'm not going anywhere until I decide it's time. Neither should you.